This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to this edition of Traders Exchange. As always, everything that we're going to be talking about today is for educational purposes only, and nothing is intended as any type of investment advice. So, like I said, we have a lot of questions, and I love the questions that I see coming in. And I never, one of the things that, we talked about this when we were at onsite, but one of the things that I really attribute to getting to where I am, I don't want to say as quickly as possible because it could have been a lot quicker, but is being able to teach. And one of the things that I've always done with Traders Exchange is I never actually read the full question before Traders Exchange. Now, unfortunately, when emails pop up, you do see kind of like a subject line in like one sentence, so I can get the idea of kind of where it's going. But I've always found that it's really sharpen my skills to be able to see something, read a question, and especially, a detailed question, and be able to know exactly how to analyze it and where it needs to go to be able to kind of translate it back to you guys to be able to give you an answer. And it comes down to when we're looking at a trade, when something pops up, being able to analyze it quicker and quicker. So just, kind of something interesting that I've noticed over the course of my teaching career. But one of the biggest things too is that a lot of what I teach you guys, it's just things that I see that come from what you say, or things that I notice, and where I can see retail really getting in trouble, and where we kind of have to focus on those aspects. And SPCE is one of just a great trade that I do want to talk about a little bit before we do get started with our questions. So what would we call this? Just overall, looking at SPCE today, what would we call this? On average, trades 86 cents. On average, its volume is about 20 million, which is definitely going to be skewed considering the fact that it's a hot stock exception. Tracy said beautiful, which I completely agree with you. But it's definitely an exception. But I want to teach you a little bit about the psychology of things for a little bit. So when we see and when we look at this stock, how would we describe its chart personality? We just did our classes on personalities, and it's something that really gives you an idea of how to kind of interpret what you're seeing going on out there. But what do we notice when we look at our chart personality? So minimum pullbacks build on the way up, absolutely. I mean, that kind of pretty much says it. I mean, that's really what it shows us, is it has very minimal pullbacks. But one of the things that we have to be able to understand, especially about personalities, and this is almost kind of, just going a little bit further into what we talked about in classes, is we have to understand that can anything look too pretty for too long? I want to talk about the psychology for a second. Can anything really look too pretty for too long? Because does money time end? I don't care if they were building for a move up this entire time. Now, it doesn't matter at some point, but it doesn't matter the number, and we're not going to go on calculations right now, but eventually money time is going to have to end. So when I see a chart like this in SPCE, and I see this personality, it's really, if at the end of the day, if you're going to look for a stock to kind of almost set it and forget it type deal, I mean, it doesn't have enough of a range and is a cheaper stock, so anything could happen at once. It's not typically a set it and forget it, but this is the type of personality that really does show that set it and forget it, because minimal pullbacks and it just continues on. These are the days where you have a brand new trader that starts and they click the button and they figure out how easy trading is. So what do you think they do tomorrow? Well, you just click the button and you end up making money because stocks are just perfect. But I want you to kind of think about the psychology behind that for a second, and by the psychology of money time eventually ending. Because when we first start to move like this, okay, we can start with the beginning of our day. And we're going to use chart personality to really kind of understand this. But we start in our pre-market. Okay, so a stock that moves from 850 almost to 950, but we'll call it $1. Okay, stock that moves like that in the beginning. When people start to look at that, what is the retail side of things start to think? What does the retail side of things start to think when they see that type of move? Well, it's got to be hot today. There's something going on. There's definitely possibility for money. It's a cheaper stock, which takes in a larger pool than a more expensive stock. Something that we have to think about, because most people are going to be able to trade a $9.50 stock, or at the beginning point, even though they weren't able to trade yet, an $8.50 stock. So you have a larger pool of people that are going to be paying attention to it. So they're going to put their orders out there and so on and so forth. But that's the pre-market. But does retail look at the pre-market that early? So it's interesting because how many people, how many investors do you think have the financial channels on bright and early? Or traders, swing traders, not as much day traders, but most people are going to have that there. All right. Now, this morning, when we talked about our morning meeting, all right, well, we didn't really talk about a morning meeting because there wasn't one. Was there really much to look at? Were there many things out there that would make a good news story for a financial channel based off the pre-market that we saw this morning? Not at all. So on a regular day, if we had a great pre-market, this might not pop up as much as a day where there's nothing really to talk about. So what else was there really to look at besides SPCE if you're up before the market opens? Was there really anything else out there that jumped at us? So more than likely, the story's going to have to be on it. Even though it's not a huge move, the volume wasn't great. It went into consolidation. There's not really much that they're going to be looking at. So this is really kind of going to be the main focus of most of the retail traders that are looking to do something today, because those financial channels, Yahoo Finance, whatever the hell they use, whatever outlet that they're using to actually scan or look at stocks to pay attention to, whether and the financial channels are the biggest one, because you put it on, there's just not really much to talk about. So they're either going to go towards news, so they could talk about the troops from Russia pulling out a little bit from the Ukraine. They could talk about that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, before the morning bell, what are they trying to talk about? And it's stocks. So this is really something that most people are probably going to be interested in. But I want you to think about something in the way that we look at chart personalities. So this morning, stock pulls back a little bit, a couple of minutes. What happens when they start to see the stock move up like this? And I know in looking at it, it doesn't look like a huge amount from going from 875 up to 925. But is 50 cents a lot for a $9 stock? Or in that case, $8.75 stock? Is that a lot? Is it going to entice a lot of retail in thinking the stock has more room? It absolutely is. So now we got to think about retail for a second. How many of retail caught this move? How many of retail traders caught that original move off of the movement coming to the upside? Barely any. And what's the reason behind that? Why, Trevor, when you say barely any, are you correct? Why did barely anyone catch that trade? Not pretty yet. Okay. Just started becoming pretty. I get that. So it's definitely enticing. Don't get me wrong. The market opens. It's definitely enticing, because when they see this, okay, we can see that a stock only needs to make 50 cents. Can retail see that a stock can only make 50 cents? And Trevor, it moved too quickly. How many retail traders are ahead of what's going to happen? Yeah, you might get a few out there, but pretty damn close to zero. So when they see this coming on, they're not going to be getting in on this trigger that comes in right there. What they're going to be getting in on is after the original move that starts to happen. But I want you to think about something. Is this a sexy looking stock? Now, overall, I'm not talking about the overall. So yes, of course, you look at this trend, just beautiful, up, 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 up. That's great. But we know that now as it's over here. Okay, so when we actually look at the trading, how much enticing was really going on to get more people in? Anti-sexy. How enticing was this? It had a trend. So, but does a trend make people excited? Because when do you know a trend has formed? So yes, overall, but yeah, after it's already happened. So there's really no trend until, you get that move up, then you go into consolidation. There's no real trend until we come, towards almost the middle point, and that's if you caught it at that point. And then, obviously now we could look at it. It was a beautiful trend afterwards, but hindsight's always going to be 2020. So the reason I'm bringing this up, just based off personality, is that I want you to understand the psychology behind what's actually going on. Because if it's not sexy enough to really get people enticed into it, what can we, to a high percentage, what name can we put to it? What can we identify it as? If it's not enticing enough, there's not enough spots where it's enticing enough to get people in. So the exact opposite. It wouldn't be building, would it? Because if they're not worried about enticing people and they're just watching it and allowing a stock slowly to come up, what does that tell us about their position? Exactly. So it's not building, it's actually money time for the market makers that have put in the work and put in the prints previously. But we have to understand something. Can money time last forever? It cannot. So even though we saw most of the prints that we actually saw were what? If we think about print personality, and I don't mean print personality of how many prints are on average a regular market maker comes into the stock, but print personality overall, what type of prints have we been seeing that are overwhelming in comparison to another type of print? It's really, when we break it down, we have controlling prints, we have off-level prints, right? So what has really been going on here? Has it been people making money, or has it been people building? It's off level continuing to push. It's the off level that are continuing to look at money. But we have to understand something. Money time will always come to an end. Even if this stock needs to go to 20, would it make sense to have money time all the way to 20? And it's coming back to why I said, when we were coming to this 10 level, that we had to be very careful. And at every second in the stock, we actually have to be very careful right now, because eventually money time has to come to what? If we break it down like that, the psychology behind money time, that means I'm making money now. But if the stock really has time, or not even time, it really has a monetary increment to continue up, what are they going to have to start doing at some point? So getting out, if this stock needed to go to 20, would it make sense to get out a ton of it? See, the thing is that a lot of you guys got so caught up when you were looking at the stock in the off-level selling that was coming in. And there were certain points, even underneath that 10, as we were getting closer there, above that 10, coming towards that 1050, we started seeing a lot of selling that was coming into it. But if we know the personality wasn't much building, and overall, most of the prints that we were seeing were off level, which tells us short-term people that are looking to make money right now. Is that selling going to affect the way the stock moves to the downside? Because you all were missing a point. We saw a lot more selling starting to come in. We saw the selling, but who is made mostly in this stock? Because we know, if we go back to the daily chart, we know it's been in consolidation for quite some time, right? Almost since the beginning of the year. Got that little drop off, but we've been sitting in this little consolidation that's coming into there. So based off of the personality that we see in the stock, it's telling us that they're pretty much in money time. Now we understand we're not getting a huge amount of on major level prints or controlling prints, but we're getting mostly short-term off-level type prints. So who's mostly in this stock? Today, not overall, but today, a lot of people looking to make money now. a lot of day traders. That's why we're not getting those big pullbacks. So when we see a ton of selling coming in, if we had mostly controlling prints, and this was a regular stock, that wasn't really an exception, it wasn't in money time, and we saw that much selling, what would the stock be doing right now? What would the stock be doing right now if this was a regular situation, it wasn't a money time situation? What would we end up seeing? Exactly. 10 wouldn't have held for 2 seconds. We would have seen it come back up above 10. They would have came back down and they would have tried to make their money. But when we look at that print personality that tells us that it's all shorter term trading coming in, even though it looks like a lot of selling, it's just people that are taking off and ending their trade, that short-term trade. But does it change the overall story of what they're looking to do? Because we could have easily be 10 no matter what. I don't care what the prints look like, what anything is. I'm always going to be in defense mode when we come to a number like 10. We know that's a huge psychological level. There's going to be a ton of market makers that are sitting there. But when we see it just continue past that 10 level, and we don't see that huge, I mean, most of it, I put the actual, and I'll just put it up just so you guys can get a visual of what it looks like. Okay, but when we look at 10, most of the prints coming into 10 came from where? It wasn't the 10 level that was hit as hard. It was the prints coming up to them. So we say ballsy prints, but let's go even further, because ballsy prints, yes, but ballsy prints typically mean what? And it's not typically, to the very high percentage, ballsy prints mean what? What type of trader is that? Day traders. Definitely confident, definitely market maker with that amount of shares that we just saw. So there's definitely people. The market makers are the people that are looking to make it in, to make that move in that very short term. So we could get caught up thinking, okay, this needs to follow the rules, it needs to pull back from that 10 level, but it actually never needed to. And if we look at all the personalities put together, and really all you need is the chart personality and then the actual print personality, showing us that there's way more shorter term traders coming into the stock than there actually are longer term traders. What it tells us is that selling that's coming in, unless it's dominant and it's just crazy, doesn't really mean as much in comparison to a stock that was trading normally, that wasn't in that exception. So at this point, could I expect an all at once pullback? Knowing the information I know, can I expect that to a high percentage? I absolutely could not. Now, don't get me wrong. Can anything happen? Of course. We're coming to 10. I'm always going to be in that defense mode because it's the 10 level and I know market makers are there. I know they could do whatever the hell they want. So I'm always going to be in that defensive mind state just because it's at that level. But when we actually take into account everything that happened and everything that it showed us, statistically speaking, was it going to happen? Because we know a stock that's too pretty, we for the highest percentage, we're going to look for something to happen all at once. And for about a 70% chance, it's going to. But if we take apart this stock and take apart all the variables and the personalities that it gave us, it actually told us exactly what needs to happen. So that selling that comes in doesn't mean much. That 10, who's controlling the stock today? The people looking to build or the people looking to make money? Those day traders and money time. And that's why, we can really make it simple, and I could say the personality doesn't warrant for many pullbacks. But if you don't understand why it doesn't warrant for pullbacks, the next time that this happens, you're not going to be able to really be able to utilize and be able to trade it in the correct way. Because anytime that this happens, or anytime we see a stock like this, it falls into those two categories. Understanding if there's shorter term trading coming into a beautiful trend or if there's more longer term trading. Because we talk about a stock getting away from where it needs to be. Okay, so for instance, we had ask prints at 950. Technically, it should have pulled back, a substantial amount from those ask prints at that 950. Okay, but overall, the personality within the shorter term prints that just keep coming in and coming in and coming in told us that doesn't need to happen, because this stock today is not being controlled by the builders. It's being controlled by short term. And if short term's in a stock, is there any reason a short term trader needs an all at once type pullback? Absolutely not. But he said, can you walk us through your thought process as you're seeing more ass start pouring in above the 9, like you're raising your expected profit target 50 cents or any other increments from those off level? So the thing is, off level prints, can I follow? And this is actually going to, I believe it might. I'm going to read this question. I think the question that we were going to talk about might coincide exactly. It said I only see like the first sentence. Come on. There we go. My email computer went to sleep. There we go. Okay. So how can off-level prints give us an indication of time frame and help us better understand the market maker's intentions? For example, DCFC this morning wasn't printing at levels. Under 12 had some decent off-level buying. We pulled back and triggered off the 1150. This question might not be clear, but I feel like I may be able to build on it. After all, you're Rich Lepis of the charts. Yeah, okay. So let's talk about off-level prints for a second. So the more off-level prints that come into a stock, can I assign more of a monetary value? And I really think that's the question you're asking, B. Can I assign more of a monetary value the more off-level prints that come in? And the answer is kind of, which doesn't help anything whatsoever, but I'm going to give you a fundamental rule to go by. In off-level prints, okay, if 10 market makers all come in off-level prints and the stock is trading in 50-cent increments, how much do each one of those people need to make? Those off-level prints, they're going to need to make 50 cents. Now, if it's way over print personality, technically, should they make more than 50 cents? Probably. By calculations, technically they should, but do they need to? They don't. Well, when I say do they need to a high percentage over and over again, do they need to? So you're right, nothing ever needs to happen, but they technically don't need to. So when I come up above that 9 level and I see these off-level prints, okay, and I see I can only, each individual burst, I can only assign a 50-cent profit margin, or in there, from there, what they're showing me, a 50-cent price target from what the trade that they're getting into. So for instance, we get $9.99. Okay, those prints that came in at $9.99, right underneath that 10 level. What can I assign that person needs to make? So what's the number? Should be simple math. Take 1 cent away from 1049. Technically, they only need to, and so 1050-ish is a perfect answer, but technically, we're talking about 1049. That's the only thing. Now, when we just sold those prints at 1099, aren't they way above print personality? Drastically above print personality is even a better way to put it. But essentially, I can really only add 50 cents to that person. So now I come in, okay, and we come above 10. Does anyone remember some great off-level prints that happen above 10? Because I do. 1010. So technically, how high does the stock need to go at this point? 1060. Even though there were more than what print personality is, and we're getting these prints, I can only assume, because they're showing me. Now, it's a little bit different here. So 1010, we can never go wrong with being conservative, right? So 1010 technically should make more than 50 cents. Why is that? Why is 1099 and 1010 two completely different things? When did you decide that it was short-term traders? Was it at 1010? No, it was all day. So the thing is that we just kept getting phenomenal off-level ask prints with selling involved. But I tell you guys all the time, when a stock's going up, what am I worried about? Am I worried about the selling or am I worried about the new buying? New buying always. And especially in this, but the print personality, the personality that we talked about in our last classes, and when I say, because print personality, technically, by the way I defined it, is the fact of how many prints it takes on an average market maker position. So, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But there's more parts, the last class that we just did, there's more parts to what the print personality is. And we saw that there's way more. As soon as the market opened, as soon as we were watching the stock, we saw there were way more prints that were coming in at 1040, 1043, excuse me, 1040, 940, 943 here. But then we got to 950 and it wasn't as much. So overall, the print personality is way more shorter term traders than traders that are looking to build anything. We saw that. I mean, it was just blatantly obvious. It's almost like the money flow of controlling prints versus off-level prints. Well, in this case, the off-level prints were just way, way higher. Okay, tip the scale big time coming into that. All right, so when I start to see that, I know that the shorter term, prints are coming in. But back to what the original question I asked you is, why is 999 so different than 1010? How many people are looking out there to buy at 999? So I'm a market maker. I want to get some big, some big shares here. How many people are looking to buy at 999? Just that guy. It's a very small pool of people to search for. 999 to buy right underneath the 10 level. I don't care if you just started trading. Someone's taught you about support and resistance at this point. And for you to buy at 999, you're an idiot. Okay? You're either an idiot or a genius. It's one or the other if you buy at that point. Now, obviously, we look for the geniuses, and the other people, we kind of just let go by the wayside. But you're literally either an idiot or a genius, because you know it's going to happen. But now 1010, why does that change from 999? Why is 1010 different than 999? So it's a new confidence. Okay, I agree with that. It's showing buying as it's going higher, but that's not really it. Think about it. How many people are willing to buy at 1010 versus people willing to buy at 999? There's got to be way more, because now we're over the support line. The retail just sees, well, I've missed this whole trade. Now I can tell it's a beautiful trend. Now it's above 10. I have my support there. Let's go. Time to buy. But at 9.99, everyone's waiting for another cent, actually 2 cents, to get up above that point. So we know there's going to be more volume. So at 10.10, I'm going to be expecting a little bit of a pullback in comparison to at 9.99. I really don't care about a pullback because of the difference in where the prints are actually hit. The psychology changes drastically. Now, if it was 10.10, let's say it was 10.09 versus 10.10. It's not going to change as drastically as it would at 9.99, but at the same time, the 09, I'm going to be looking for even less of a pullback. I'm going to be looking for even quicker, because if someone's getting in at 09 and not utilizing the volume that would be there at 10.10, they're telling me that they're looking to go. They're looking for it to be a now type deal versus, a little bit of a pullback, because the person at 10.10 isn't building the same amount as the person that printed at 10. But they're still going to be looking to build a little bit. And in this case, personality tells us if they're looking to build, how much do we have to expect a pullback from? In this case, I mean, it literally went just back down to 10. We don't need a huge amount coming in. But so many people, I got so many messages coming this morning. That's why I'm spending so much time on this, because I feel like everybody was thinking it, but you're seeing this huge amount of selling coming in, but you're not paying attention to the new buying and how much that person needs to make in comparison. When we have off-level prints, that gives us that time frame of quicker. Now, at the end of the day, what actually creates time frame? And it's the word that if you say, you're probably almost always going to be right to some extent. But yeah, our volumes, what actually makes that happen, that time frame happen. Okay, but remember, prints happen before the chart actually moves. So we have to be able to kind of, gauge based off of everything that we're seeing going on out there. But seeing all that selling coming in, if there's a ton of short-term traders trading it, aren't we going to see selling almost at every single level? Because if we get off-level prints at 953, then 963, then 973, think about it. Those people only need to make 50 cents. So we're just going to consistently be seeing big selling and big selling and big selling and big selling. But that selling isn't scary because of the fact that we know those people need to make their money. But we get caught up in it. You got to think, when a stock goes into money time mode for a day, what do you think the size of the positions in this stock are from previous days that the thing's been being set up for a month? It's massive. So at this point, yes, of course, we see controlling prints. We're going to have to really kind of take those into account of overall what's going to happen. But what's happening in this stock, the way I can trade it today, was very, very clear. Because there just wasn't even close. You're talking about almost let's say a 2 to a 20% versus 80%. We had about 80% of people coming in these off-level prints. We had about 20% of people hitting the actual levels. So if that doesn't scream out to you short-term type of day, exception type of day, well, next time it happens, you need to focus on it. Because when you see something like that, it gives you the ability to be able to consistently trade this. Because these things happen all the time. But if we don't understand the psychology behind why something happens, okay, when I tell you that a stock that looks too pretty needs to pull back all at once, it's because most of the time, 70% of the time, that's going to happen. But the 30% of the time that it doesn't happen, what's the reason? It's not because it should have and it didn't just happen. What was actually going on that stopped it from having an all at once type pullback? You just talked about it. What's the reason? What did we see that told us it's nothing to build? There's way too many short-term traders in there. Okay, if you have one person that's looking to build, how much time do they have before their position needs to do something? You have one person that's out there looking to build. How much time do they have to acquire a position, to build a position? Is it going to be today, or are they building for a long? Yeah, they got all the time in the world. I mean, I wouldn't say, all the time in the world, but they don't have to do anything today. It's not like, at the end of the day, they have to go answer to their trade manager and say, well, yeah, I just didn't get it done today. Because they have days to be able to actually do it. But when you see 80% of people coming in short term to make money, when do they need to make money? Now. And when 80% of people are trading short term versus 20% of people building, is the stock going to build that day? Can they go against the 80% of shorter term traders? Can it happen? Especially when we talk about building, does building move a stock? Do building prints move a stock? They don't, but off-level prints do. So there's just such an overwhelming amount of these people that are looking to trade it in the short term that they're actually the ones controlling the stock today. Now, does that happen often? No. That's why our rules are based off controlling prints. But when you see something like this, these are the type of days where retail literally could hit the button and they're going to make money because it's a money time day. And that's what our personalities showed us. But understanding how we got to this and understanding what we need to look for, the next time you see it, it's going to give you the ability to trade. Otherwise, you're still going to be sitting here waiting, at 9 for the stock to pull back from ask prints, which in that case, you could be waiting a long, long time before you're going to be able to trade it. When we see that selling that comes in, it makes perfect sense if you actually understand where that off level, that now type buying is coming in. Because if you see someone, and there's no way that you're ever going to be able to count this, okay? But overall, you're going to be able to get an idea based off volume. But let's say you see 100,000 shares, or someone buy 100,000 shares at 10, and then you see 100,000 shares at 10.50 sell. Does that have anything to do with the stock itself? Or does it have to do with one person's game plan? Just one game plan. So when you get that new buying after what looks like big selling, that person just doesn't have anything to do with the stock anymore. That was their game plan. And then that new buying coming in now tells us we have something new to look at. How do we know when this stock is going to turn around? Because we always want to be ahead. We always want to be thinking, 2 steps before what the other person beyond the other side of the computer is doing. So what could tell us that the stock is going to be looking to turn around? Because eventually it's going to have to turn around a little bit. And I mean, again, I just said have to. Nothing has to happen. Okay, so lack of new buying. No, yes and no. So buying dries up and new selling. So that would be a simple way to put it, but no. Money flow, okay. So we know something about the stock, guys. 80% of people are doing what, and 20% of people are doing what? Not buying versus selling. Long-term versus short-term. Trading versus building. That the exact words. Trading versus building. So what happens when we start to see the off-level prints getting smaller than what we've seen before, and we start to see the actual level prints getting higher? For instance, like when we keep hitting this 1050 and we keep getting some of the biggest bid prints, some of the biggest controlling prints we've seen. Yeah, we can start to see that transition to building happening. So everything that gave us the indication that it was money is going to start to change. The off level is going to start getting smaller. You're going to start to see the actual at level get bigger. So we start to see that transition. So 80% trading, 20% building. When we start to see it get closer to 60% trading and 40% building, that's what gives us the indication to look for a difference. Because otherwise, if we just keep getting prints like this at 1064, 1065, and we just keep seeing this happening, is anything going to change? Think about a person. If a person's personality is going to change, are you going to see indications of everything they did yesterday and the day before and the day before that and so on and so forth, and continue on? Are we going to see differences within what's happening? It's not like one day you just all of a sudden you go to talk to your friend and they're a completely different person. No, you would see indications of that. There would be certain things that were happening. And for some reason, we like to make stocks really complicated. But to understand when this is going to change and when it's not going to be in that money time, because right now you might say, well, it's changed. Volumes got lower. But why did that happen? Why are we in what we're in right now, which consolidation? Why is that happening? Time of day. It's just, I mean, the fact that it even pushed into 12 is phenomenal. But right now, this is just time of day. Does that mean that the stock doesn't have more room up? Well, the answer is, when do we start to see the off-level prints start shifting closer to the building prints? And it's not going to just be all at once. It's not going to be like all of a sudden now you see building prints and there's no, off-level prints. Because a stock that's trading this much volume, almost 121 million shares happening already. Okay, is this stock going to just stop having people trying to trade it? For the most part, anything could happen again. But now, statistically speaking, that's not going to happen. But these are the things that we have to pay attention to, because otherwise, we're going to sit here and just think, well, the personality is just, I got two questions. The reason I'm spending so much time on this is because this type of stock is going to happen over and over again. Okay, if you really understand something that happens over and over again, that's the key to consistency. But I had two ways that people looked at it, and I had questions from multiple people. So one of the ways that someone looked at it was it's too pretty. It needs to have a large pullback. It needs to happen all at once. And the other way that I saw people looking at it were, well, its personality says this is what needs to happen. But neither of them are right. Because technically, does this stock tell you in any way whatsoever at the moment it needs an all at one type pullback? I mean, it's getting closer to it, don't get me wrong, but that's also because, once again, time of day. But is anything about this say that it needs to have an all at once pullback? So not until it happens, Vinny. And the thing is that if I wait for something to happen, can I trade it? I need to know when something's going to happen before it happens. It's the only way I can anticipate. Okay, so no, it doesn't say that at all. But it also, can I just look at a stock with a beautiful uptrend that is that pretty and think this is just its personality forever? So this is how I'm going to trade it regardless of anything else that happens. Can I say that? No. So both of my answers to both sides of that coin are the same answer. Doesn't need an all at once pullback because right now it says this, but really what I'm looking for is a change in personality in the way that it's trading, in the way that the print personality is, the way that the tape is. Because that personality can then, because eventually, does this stock need a big pullback based off of what we see in everything that goes on? 100%. At some point, it's going to need a big pullback. But does it need to happen right now? No. How do we anticipate that? And it's the same way as just following the same personality. Can I just follow the same personality? No, because I need to be able to be well aware of a change in that personality before it actually happens. And remember, the prints come first, then the chart. So by looking at it this way, we can understand that when things start to change, we know exactly what to look for. Because saying that a stock needs to pull back all at once, essentially, isn't that a guess? Now, yes, does it happen to a very large percentage of stocks that are going to have a beautiful trend? It does. But really, at the end of the day, you're guessing. You see what I mean? Just like saying that, the personality is going to keep, keep in the same way for the rest of the day. That's a guess. I have to be able to match that chart with what the prints have shown us. And that print personality is really giving us what goes on with the chart. On a day, just think about if you had everyone take a piece of paper and a pen right now. If I told you there's nothing but off-level buying in a stock and you had to draw that chart, what would it look like? Nothing but off-level buying. Yeah, I wouldn't make it just one straight bar up, but yeah, it would look just like this over the course of time, just going straight up, straight up, straight up, straight up. But I want you to think about something completely different. If this same stock gave us huge ass prints at 9, didn't pull back. Huge ass prints at 950, didn't pull back. Huge ass prints at 10, didn't pull back. Huge ass prints at 1050, didn't pull back. What would my chart look like now? And that's actually a good one. But I would expect that beautiful trend with a huge pullback before eventually it would end up coming back up. Do you see what I mean? So just look, when we were going over personalities, I said there's no way to actually just look at a chart and be able to trade just with that. Okay, just because the personality says something, that's, you're literally just following a chart then, and we all know what happens if you're just following a chart. Okay, but do you see how the substance and the actual way it's printing, or its printing personality, I guess is a way that you could put it, its printing personality actually tells me two completely different things, even with the same exact chart? So it's something that we have to be focused on. Can't get caught up on just one little aspect of personalities. We need to encapsulate everything. Would the market maker make the stock look the most pretty right at the end of the move, like that the sucker in retail before the trade? Almost always you're going to see that unsustainable volume bar, or volume getting higher, or even waxing volume coming in. But you almost always see that push, that last push to entice, to then end up coming back down. And there's something that I always look for in that last bar to entice. And what do you think that is? Because a bar is a bar, but that last bar to entice can mean two different things. So is there substance in that last bar? Because if there's substance, is that a great way to take a ton of money to make a stock go up? Or are you going to try to use a little bit less money? So it's a substance. And we saw that a bunch of times in some moves that came up in here. We just got those off-level prints right above 10, that 10-10, those 10-10. We saw that huge substance, that huge buying that was coming into it. So when we saw those moves, that wasn't enticing anybody. That was somebody looking to trade it. In comparison to when they do, or they almost always on a pretty stock like that want to push up first to get that last bit of retail to get into there before they drop it to then take their shares. The substance typically is going to be way different. And the only way we could go about knowing that is understanding what type of printing personality does it have. If you start to see a lot of the off-level prints starting to slow down a bit, because remember, they're never going to go away. There's too much volume in this type of stock. So they're always going to be there. But in comparison, if we start to see them going slower, now we start to see those controlling prints getting higher, we can be under that assumption that now we're getting closer to a change. Because if we don't get that change in the printing personality, this stock literally could just have small pullbacks and go up the entire day. How often does that happen? Not very often. That's why we don't focus on stocks like this all the time, because it's not something that happens every day. And if it's not something that happens every day, we're better off focusing on things that do. But understanding this is not only going to help you understand when a stock is just trading normally, but it's going to help you understand how to identify this is happening in the beginning and not miss such a cheap stock moving $2.16 with really no worries of any type of big pullback. Not only did this stock move almost 3 times what its range is, okay, but how hard is it to cut your losers? How hard is it to cut your losers on a stock like this? It's not hard at all. It's very easy, right? So can you beat that? Can you beat a stock, a cheap stock that doesn't take a ton of money to invest into, to have more shares, that you could control that has big movement, and that you could easily control your losers with? Can you beat that? So next time we see this type of stock and we see that type of personality coming into it, we want to be able to identify it. And there's another big aspect of this. Have we seen the personality change yet between off-level and building? Have we seen that personality change yet? So it was starting to a certain extent, but we also, again, we have to take into account the time of day. Time of day is so important in understanding that things have to slow down because volume's slowing down. But has it changed drastically enough to change what we see and what we can expect? So not really. So if it hasn't really happened yet, okay, we can look at this stock forever. The same type of stock. Anyone ever get caught in a cheap stock that showed some prints that needs to do something? You watch it all day, miss all the other trades, and you never end up getting a trade in it because it's just completely dead? Everyone's answer should be yes, because we've absolutely all been there. But statistically speaking, okay, what are the chances of this getting an afternoon move? They're high. So is this a stock that's worth keeping an order ready to catch something out of nowhere versus sitting there watching something that nothing's going to happen in? It absolutely is. A lot, again, a lot of what we do now is going to be a lot more advanced. And the reason being, because that's what Traders Exchange is for. When we see something that happens, we want to identify it at that moment. Because if if let's say we miss a question from today, which we're going to miss questions from today, obviously, okay, but going back to a stock that happened last week isn't the same as doing a stock today. That's why, these nightly recaps are priceless because it just happened. So it's fresh in your head. You know exactly what's going on. So when we see something like this, guys, this doesn't happen every day, but it does happen often. And now everyone's always, concentrated on exceptions versus rules and so on and so forth. And this is honestly, I just saw it today. And it was just a great opportunity to put an exception. We can really see that exception within the printing personality. And then we know when it comes back to reality because that printing personality starts to change. Got to think about it. If it keeps trading the same exact way, we could expect the same exact personality. But if it starts changing in the way that the printing is happening and the way that it's trading, we now know that we can start looking for something else, especially because SPCE is shortable. The reason I'm spending so much time on this is because I'm not even expecting an answer or from anybody, but how many people wanted to short the hell out of this for a lot of the day? So at least John's honest. But so many people did. And I saw that happening. And I saw every time that bar coming down, I just saw money being lost and it hurt. It hurt to see that because I knew exactly what they were doing. I knew exactly what was happening. But I also knew exactly what the reaction was going to be based off those rules. So if we don't understand what to be looking for, we're going to keep trying to short it. And then guess what ends up happening? On a stock that's just a beautiful long, we end up getting shaken out 4 or 5 times. And now all of a sudden it's a terrible day. And we don't utilize those prints that were telling us, go long, go long, go long. Not for nothing, but if there's a day that they let retail make money, do we want to be involved in that? Hell yeah, because it doesn't happen often. This is that type of trade that someone that was right on the verge of quitting, okay, doesn't quit now. Because remember, the market makers, they don't want to kill they don't want to just blow up accounts. Now, yeah, there'll be more accounts, but the more people that are willing to, to stay in the market and give them money, the better off they are. So they got to give good days like this every once in a while. You get a car. But do we see how this works? Again, it's just, one of those things that I will always do. I know we have a bunch of specific questions and we will always get to them, but when there's something that happens that's just right in front of you, that's happening at real time. I know in my trading career and trying to learn this, there was just no better lessons in the world, especially something that I've been watching and to be able to make sense of it. Because if I can make sense of it today, the next time it happens, it's the same thing. Okay, you're going to continue. The harder you work at this and the better you start to get, you're going to notice that you're really just seeing the same trades over and over again. There's no, special new crystal ball that's going to come out. It's just the same thing day in and day out. But like I said, this type of trade is definitely it's going to happen a lot less than a trade that you're going to see a stock coming up to a psychological level and come all the way down. But at 10 would have been a great spot to look to short, besides the fact it told you can't short me. Just can't do it because of all the variables and that printing. I'm going to use that as our term from now on. You have your print personality, which is the amount of prints on a typical position that show from a market maker, and your printing personality is, are they hitting major levels? Okay, or are they hitting those off-level prints harder? In this case, like I said, 80-20. When you see 80-20, I'm making money now. Well, guess what? That's where exceptions come from. Do we have any questions? Any questions? Like I said, I know we have a bunch of questions, and I promise you next week I will not have a topic. I will make sure that I go straight through them, and I'll make sure they all get answered. But again, like I said, there's no better time than now. When something happens that happens over and over again, we need to identify it, because if you continually identify things that happen over and over again, that's where consistency comes from. All right, guys, so I will talk to everyone in the chat, and happy trading.